For complete analysis on this, we are welcoming in White House columnist with TheHill.com, Niall Stanage. Niall, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Natasha.
Niall, do you think Trump's longest-lasting legacy, even at this point, is his Supreme Court appointments?
Oh, yes, I absolutely do. I think there's almost no question about that. One reason being that the three justices whom he appointed are all in their 50s, so they can reasonably expect to be on the court for at least a couple of decades. The other point, Natasha, which I know we were mentioning before, is the centrality of the Supreme Court to deciding some of the absolutely most divisive or contentious or hot-button issues in American society. The court plays an enormous role in deciding those kinds of topics.
And Niall, if Trump regains the White House, could that be good for Republicans and ensure a conservative agenda, not just for the next 4 years, but for decades to come when it comes to the court?
Yes, it could. I mean, obviously, the court's only one branch of government, and much will depend on what happens to the legislature and to the White House. But yes, I mean, clearly the court at various points in its history has moved the nation at large in a conservative or liberal direction. A generation ago, we had a much more liberal court that decided everything from civil rights issues to Roe versus Wade. Now we have a much more conservative court. If that continues, I would expect the court then to give even greater momentum and solidity to conservative values and conservative viewpoints.
And let's talk about those issues. If Thomas and Alito were to step down under another Trump presidency and Trump chooses justices in their 30s or 40s or 50s, he would then have appointed 5 of 9 justices. So, Niall, we have seen the overturning of Roe and the Chevron doctrine. What kinds of issues going forward can we expect? I know that you've mentioned IVF.
Yes, I mean, the IVF issue has become a much more contentious one since Roe versus Wade was struck down. And we had that decision from the Alabama Supreme Court earlier this year, which, to make a complicated story short, found that embryos could have or could be legally considered as people or as having rights that are similar to those of people who have been born. If that were to proceed further up the line as a general issue, it is something that this very conservative court could weigh in on, as well, of course, as lots of other topics pertaining to the business world, regulation, or to the power of the executive, the power of the president, which the court has already made some key rulings on.
And now let's talk about Democrats. I want to bring up an article from the Chicago Sun-Times posing the question, should Democrats be pushing for Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, both Obama appointees, to bow out now before the election so that Biden can name their younger successors? Tell us more about this.
There is an argument for this, but honestly, I think the justices in question are relatively young and I think would have some years to go on the Supreme Court, all going, according to plan. But I think one of the reasons there's such democratic or liberal trauma around this topic actually pertains to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the now deceased Supreme Court jurist, who during the Obama presidency was approached to see if she might consider stepping down. She declined to do so. Then, obviously, former President Trump was elected in 2016, and Ginsburg's decision tilted the balance of the court in effect. And so that's the thing that liberals are worried about history repeating itself on.
Niall, I know that you said that many of the tangible advances of the civil rights movement came as a result of liberal justices and a liberal skew on that court overall. Tell us more about that.
Well, Brown versus Board of Education is a prime example, which rendered the idea of segregated education unconstitutional. Prior to that, there had been a notion of separate but equal. The court in the 1950s said, no, you can't have that. That is inherently unconstitutional. It's also worth noting, Natasha, that it was only in the late 1960s that the court struck down bans on interracial marriage, which is kind of striking when you look back on it. But those bans had still been in place for many years, up until the aptly named Loving v. Virginia case saw the bans on interracial marriage also being struck down.
Niall Stanage, always bringing us the context and the historical implications. I really appreciate it tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.